You're the man everyone counts on. At work, at home, maybe even at church. You're the one who keeps it together. You carry the weight without showing it, meet expectations without complaining, and keep moving forward even when something inside you feels stuck. Most people don't notice. They see the role you play, not the pressure you carry. And the truth is, you've carried it so long, you've started to forget what it feels like to be fully present in your own life. You've built a good life, but you quietly wonder why it still feels so disconnected. It's not that you're failing. In fact, you're doing everything you're supposed to. Providing, leading, believing. But there's this space inside that doesn't feel filled, a kind of numbness that's hard to explain. You pray, but it feels like noise. You read scripture, but the words don't land like they used to. You've stayed faithful, but you're tired. Not physically tired, soul tired. The kind of tired that makes you question whether you're living from wisdom or just reacting from habit. Somewhere along the way, you replaced clarity with motion. You started measuring success by what gets done instead of how deeply you're aligned with who God is and who He's called you to be. Wisdom was never meant to be a concept you study. It was meant to guide how you live, how you lead, how you rest, how you speak. But when you're under pressure long enough, you learn to function without depth. And eventually, functioning becomes surviving. You're not alone in that. There are more men like you than you think. Men who are respected, needed, capable, and quietly disconnected. Men who can recite truth but haven't felt peace in weeks. Men who show up for everyone else but don't know how to stop long enough to show up for themselves. That gap doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And maybe it's not a gap to ignore. Maybe it's the signal that it's time to come back to something deeper. This isn't a call to fix everything. It's not about being more disciplined or praying harder. It's about remembering that wisdom begins where performance ends. That real strength doesn't come from doing more. It comes from finally being honest about how far you've drifted, about how tired you are, about how badly you want to walk with God in a way that actually holds under the weight of real life. No answers yet, just this moment, a breath, and maybe the beginning of something real. You can be a man of faith and still be living with a heart on autopilot. You can lead your home, serve in your church, succeed at work, and still feel like God is distant. Not because He's gone, but because you buried yourself in performance so deeply you stopped asking Him what He thinks. You move fast, handle things, fix problems, but when was the last time you sat still long enough to hear His voice? Not the one that speaks through a pastor or a podcast, the one that speaks in the quiet when there's no one left to impress. What keeps us from wisdom isn't a lack of knowledge. Most of us know the right verses. The problem is we're drowning in pressure. The pressure to provide, to stay strong, to not drop anything. And under that weight, clarity gets replaced by survival. You react instead of reflect. You manage instead of lead. You build a life that works, but not one that speaks. And you start calling it maturity, when really it's just numbness with structure. Jesus never rushed. That's something we don't talk about enough. He lived under constant demand, crowds, expectations, needs, but He never moved from pressure. He moved from presence. He went off alone to be with the Father, not to feel spiritual, but to stay aligned. And that's what wisdom is, alignment. Not just with truth in theory, but with God in the moment. It's what lets you say no when it would be easier to please. It's what helps you hold your tongue when pride wants to lead. For most men, pride doesn't show up as arrogance. It shows up as silence, as carrying things alone, as refusing to ask for help because you don't want to be a burden. But Jesus didn't carry His mission alone. He wept in front of friends. He let others help carry the cross. So why do we keep trying to prove something He never asked from us? Wisdom means unlearning the pressure to perform and learning to walk with God as a son, not just a soldier. You can't live with Christ at the center if your life is built around control. And most of us, if we're honest, don't trust God as much as we say we do. We trust our systems, our strategies, our habits. We trust what we can see. But when things slow down, when life doesn't go as planned, when the illusion cracks, what's left? That's where wisdom is formed. In the friction, in the letting go, in learning how to be led again. Start paying attention to what steals your stillness. Notice what keeps you scrolling, snapping, reacting. What voice in you says, you don't have time to stop? That voice is not the Spirit. That's the noise wisdom helps you unlearn. When you start to slow down long enough to listen, you'll notice that God is not far. He's just quiet. He doesn't force His way in. He waits for permission. If your life feels heavy, if your days feel blurred, it might not be because you're doing something wrong. It might be because you built your rhythm without Him at the center. And the beauty of wisdom is that it doesn't shame you for drifting. It simply says, come back. Not to guilt, not to performance, just back to presence, to clarity, to the voice that doesn't rush or demand, but invites. A pause, not to figure everything out, just to notice what's really been running your life, and to wonder what might happen if Christ took the lead again. Start with something that doesn't feel impressive. Before the day starts, before the scroll, the meetings, the pressure, sit alone in silence for 2 full minutes. Not to get anything from God, just to let Him see you. Just to say with your presence, I want you in this day. Not to pray the perfect words, but to stop hiding. That stillness, repeated daily, becomes a foundation. And it starts rewiring how you move, how you lead, how you hear Him. Second, ask yourself one hard question at the end of each day. Where did I move today without Christ at the center? Not to judge yourself, but to track the drift. Because the drift is always subtle. It happens in decisions made from pressure, conversations led by ego, reactions driven by fear. And wisdom starts by noticing. You can't return to God if you don't know where you left Him. But once you see it, you can invite Him back in, not with guilt, but with clarity. Third, clear physical space to match your internal shift. Pick one place, your desk, your nightstand, your garage, the seat of your truck. Clear it, reset it. Not as a ritual, but as a sign to your own soul. This part of my life now belongs to God again. That act, as small as it seems, reminds your body and mind that you're not drifting anymore. You're walking. And walking starts with the smallest step made with intention. I remember a night when everything outside looked steady, the income, the schedule, the marriage. But I was sitting in my truck in the driveway, engine off, not ready to go inside. I wasn't angry. I wasn't in crisis. I was just done, like I couldn't keep faking clarity. I whispered, God, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. And the response wasn't a solution, it was a presence. I've been here, just waiting for you to stop. That was the beginning of something new, not because everything changed, but because I finally stopped pretending. Sometimes wisdom doesn't start with understanding, it starts with surrender. The moment you stop needing to explain, justify, or prove, and simply say, God, I'm here, do what you want. That's not weakness, that's leadership. That's the kind of man who stops reacting to life and starts walking in truth. Wisdom turns presence into power. Not flashy, not loud, but unshakable. Picture a man clearing off a cluttered workbench, dust, forgotten tools, junk piled high, and he wipes it clean piece by piece, not because he's quitting, but because he's finally making room to build something real. That's what this is. You're not walking away from your life. You're clearing space to build it differently, with Christ at the center, not the edge. This doesn't require a spiritual breakthrough. It requires your willingness to stop long enough to see. And if you've made it to this point in the video, I believe you're already there. Not perfect, not finished, just honest enough to start listening again. That's all God asks for. That's all wisdom needs. If this spoke to something in you, don't brush it off. Stay with it, sit with it, and don't walk this alone. This space isn't just a channel, it's a place for men who want to live awake, to lead with integrity, to walk with peace that actually holds. If that's you, stay close. Subscribe if it feels right, not for content, but for brotherhood, truth, and a slower, stronger kind of faith. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. You just have to stop running. Let wisdom in. Let Christ lead again, not from theory, but from the quiet corners of your real daily life. He's not asking for performance. He's waiting for presence. That starts now. May God bless you deeply, and may you walk awake, with Christ at the center.